Flaunt it if you got it.
I don't think the goal of either of our ministry is flaunt it if you got it.
Oh,
That
really? You don't
seems
think it's a show thing?
look at me. I'm a minister.
Woo-hoo.
Okay, with that, let's get started. My guest today is the truly wonderful Reverend Susie Idzik. We were ordained together. I'll insert a picture of us at Ordination. Also, we sat together at Ordination. That was fun. And we're gonna talk. I don't know, about being not religious and being ministers and interfaith.
Yep.
What have you? Great. Well, Susie, welcome to the good world.
Great to be here.
1, 2, 3.
So come on in to a place that is fun. I'll be your friend and you can be mine. The world is a stream of constant bullshit, but that doesn't mean there's not a whole lot of good shit. You start with the lean and we can make something different. Let's build a world that is good.
This is a show for adults.
So good.
Thank you.
So good, so good.
For a while, that was the only thing that existed. Like, I didn't have a show. I just had a theme song. Well, first I had a theme song without a video, and then I worked with an animator to make the video, and then that was all I had.
And it might have been, it's a lot right there. It's great right there.
It is, and I think it conveys the vibe
Absolutely, yeah.
pretty effectively. Well, Susie, it is really wonderful to have you here. I'm really grateful and appreciative and honored that you joined me today.
Right. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks. I think I actually really like this idea of starting with the title. So you are a reverend. Mm-hmm. I am also a reverend. This is going to be not necessarily the first time that people who are watching this will see me with a title, but it's still a pretty new thing.
Yeah.
So how are you like carrying that in the world?
I resisted ordination for quite a while. I was
Yeah, that's true.
connected.
Do you want to go back and like give a little bit of
Sure.
sort of fill in some of that history for us?
I've worked in congregations for 25 years in different capacities, as administrator, as director of religious education, all sorts of different capacities, and been a spiritual director for the last 15 years. So, but consciously did not take that step into ordination. I think I had some judgment about clergy. Having worked in congregations, I had some strong opinions about clergy and what that meant, and really consciously chose not to do that. But at some point over the last few years, I wanted to sort of own my own authority by becoming clergy. I wanted to own my own voice a little bit more, and especially in the non-religious space.
Yeah.
That was really important to me.
Yeah. I feel like we should, just in the interest of explaining things to people who may not know the terms, spiritual direction is also not a term that I was, hello, dog.
Yeah. This is Denny. He'll be hanging out.
Hi, Danny. My dogs are in the house where they can't get to me because I'm in the shed, and I love them, but it would be chaos.
Right.
It would be absolute chaos. They'd be just climbing around and making lots of sounds. And Pulpo would be coming up to me and just putting his paw on me, which is the main thing he does.
Nice.
So quickly, spiritual direction. I'm still not 100% sure I understand what it is. But you are, you weren't ordained, but as a spiritual director, what's the term?
Trained.
Trained. Okay.
Trained as a spiritual director at the Chaplaincy Institute. So trained as a interfaith spiritual director, but really worked mostly with people who describe themselves as non-religious, or a lot of Unitarian Universalists. So, and for me, spiritual direction, it looks a lot like therapy, or it also can look like coaching, but the three have a lot of difference in them. Coaching is very goal oriented. You either want to make some change in your life, so it's sort of figuring out what that is and what the barriers are, and then working towards that. Therapy is about healing something that might be broken in the past, some wounding or some issue that happened, where spiritual direction is about being present in one's life now and living out life through values and looking at difficulties, but holding up those sort of core values and core beliefs and inviting in those conversations that are much deeper. So I feel passionate about it. I feel like everybody should have a spiritual director. It is deep, deep work. And the arc is much longer. I have some clients who I've seen for almost 15 years. And some who I see for 6 months. So it kind of varies that way. But it is a slower kind of work and goes very deep.
Yeah. I love that. It's sort of I like this idea of, I don't know. I often think of myself as a generalist, right? And I think that fits a lot into certainly the way that I approach ministry, and I'm guessing probably also a bit of the way that you approach it. And so I appreciate this idea of like therapy it's a big specific thing, but it's a specific thing, and coaching is also a big specific thing, but a specific thing. And so spiritual direction is a little more general. I like that.
Yeah.
So just related to this, so you've been working with congregations, you said, for
25 years.
25 years. Okay.
Yeah.
You've been a spiritual director for 15 years.
Right.
But you, like me, think of yourself as not being religious. And so this is pretty new to me. I've only been on this particular path for a couple of years. Would you be willing to share a little bit about how you got involved in working with congregations, which is something that I still am a little resistant to, I will say. I'm curious sort of what brought you in that direction in the first place.
Yeah, I was working as a graphic designer back in the 90s when desktop publishing was still a thing. So I had a business that I really wanted to call Ugly Graphics because it was making charts and graphs for accountants in big six accounting firms. And if they wanted it all caps, italicized, underlined, Times New Roman, I would do that, whatever they wanted. And, it wasn't a big aesthetic piece, but it was easy. It was fun work. It was, I could do it. I had a baby, and I could do it while I was nursing her. So I did that for quite a while, like 10, 15 years or so. But then when I had my first child, I was really deeply aware that I did not have community. I did not have connection with people. I didn't have people who understood sort of struggles of life. We were all sort of in our 20s and silly friends. And I wanted some depth. And so I had my baby. Nobody brought me food. One person showed up with a bag of tortilla chips and a thing of salsa. That was the idea of food. And I just knew there was deeper community that I needed to build for myself. And so I decided to look for a job and was really, for some reason, had this idea that either a church or a school would provide me that community. And at the same time, my husband and I were out church shopping, as one does when they have children, very common time to go look around, and ended up at the Unitarian Universalist Church. And in Berkeley, when I went to the church the first time, there was a posting for a job as an admin. And so it seemed like everything was aligned, and I applied and got that job. And that was the start of Congregational life, which was a great way to raise kids because life balance is, kind of held up as a priority. So it worked really well. So, and I love the work. I love congregational life. I think it's this very interesting bubble of people feeling deeply connected somewhere and doing deep work and having a chance to grow in a really unique way in this safe environment. And there's, working in them, there's just so many dynamics at play. And so I've, over, a couple decades have really kind of understand those dynamics really deeply and really well. And I find it just a unique kind of environment. And I've been worked in quite a few different faith traditions, and it's consistent around all those congregational dynamics. Certain types of members are in each congregation, certain unhealthiness, healthiness, all of that. So it's kind of fun.
Yeah, my wife, who is also named Suzy, who you have met and who I've talked about on this show plenty, is has gotten very involved in our local synagogue, and I have started to also get involved for a lot of the same reasons you're talking about. Like, the community is really great, and it's sort of nice as a hub. Like, I don't feel particularly drawn to services like the formal religious services, but the community is great.
Right.
And she is very aware that people have already started trying to get her to join the board, and I mean, we've lived here 4 years. We've been members for, I think, 2 years. And she's like, I really don't want to join the board. She is basically trying to not join the board for as long as she can get away with not joining the board. Because she's like, when I was growing up, both my parents were on the temple board.
Yeah.
And I know what that entails.
Yep.
And just the amount of like interpersonal politics and navigating, like, I guess I'll say egos, but it's not even necessarily egos in the same way that you might encounter them in a professional environment, right? It's just people have very strong feelings. People have strong feelings,
and their connection to community is really unique, right? And their connection to that community is unique. They, as an employee, I always held that connection as very sacred, that this was their spiritual home. So I'd be very aware of what conversations at what times I would have with people. Like on a, if it's a Sunday worshiping congregation, I wouldn't want to talk about accounting on Sunday, but I'll call you on Monday kind of thing. That was a sacred thing. And why people join is really interesting, and how people join and the different types of levels of engagement. It's all really interesting.
Yeah. There was, wife Suzy was also telling me about yesterday about there are a number of people on the board at our temple who are fairly new to it. And it's basically, they were people who, without getting into specifics, there was a particular problem that they were encountering, and they got very involved in pushing to have this particular problem fixed and changed. And they were subsequently, I don't know if it was invited or asked or sort of nudged to join the board. But the idea was basically like, look, if it's great that you want to be involved to the point where you complain about things and you feel like you have an interest in the outcomes of these situations. But if you're going to do that, then we need you to be more involved. You don't get to just sort of sit on the outside and complain and get your way every time. We need more involvement from you, which is, that was a really interesting thing for me to hear. That was not something I have encountered sort of anywhere, spiritually, business, anywhere I have been that has any kind of leadership structure.
Yeah.
And I really liked that idea.
And I love congregational life because learning that in a congregation, right? Like calling somebody in, if you're sort of saying, oh, you see conflict, come in and let's work towards solution. Like, you can do that in congregational life because there's a covenantal mutuality of joining, right? Like, people can leave. It's, you're making a choice to be there in this day and time. I don't think historically that was always true, especially in America, where you had neighborhood churches and that's how you make community. But now, people are in and then they can leave. But exercising those skills of inviting people in and staying with difficulty and resolving things is just the best life lesson. You go out and you bring that out to the rest of the world. And I think it really can change the world that way. Yeah,
I really like that. Ooh, sorry, there's a hummingbird outside my window.
Nice.
I never get tired of them. Literally the same thing happened 2 days ago. We were at Temple. There was like a special, the president of URJ, which is the Union of Reformed Judaism nationally, was in town, and so they did a service. And then we were in the courtyard, and I was having a conversation with this person, and I was like, "There's a hummingbird," just right in the middle of while he was talking. But I cannot get it. Yeah, they're so magical.
They are truly magical, and just watching them.
Yeah, I have a piece of. Are you familiar with the term headcanon?
No.
So canon, CANON, right? So like canonical story. And headcanon, it shows up mostly in works of fiction where it's like, oh, I have this idea that, I don't know, what's an example? On Game of Thrones, that Tyrion is actually a Stark or something. I'm just
Sure.
pulled that out of
Yeah.
my tuchus, as we say in the congregation.
Yes.
And so you just sort of have this idea, and it's not really officially real, but it's like, whatever, it's in your head. It's your headcanon. And a piece of headcanon that I have is that hummingbirds are the origins of mythology about fairies.
Oh,
And
yeah,
I have no idea if it's true.
No, but I like it. It makes good sense.
It does, right? They're like little, they flit around. And they don't move like anything else. It's still out there. California's great.
And sort of when you watch imagery of fairies where they're just sort of suspended and talking and doing their little,
Yeah.
same sort of image. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like it.
exactly. Yeah.
Totally works.
Anyway, yeah. Sorry for the ADHD moment there.
That's all good. It's a hummingbird. What can you
Yeah.
do?
Yeah, exactly. This is also why I have my desk oriented here with like there's a big window over there that you can't see out of, but I get to look out of it when I sit at my desk.
Yeah.
Yeah. If a dear friend of mine at my wedding, we got married in California. There were a bunch of hummingbirds. It was summer, and my friend Matt was like, I often forget that hummingbirds exist, and then
Yeah.
and then I see one, or it just sort of comes up, and I'm like, it's just kind of mind-boggling.
Yep. Yep.
I feel like this also leads nicely into the question of sort of what it is to be spiritual but not religious.
Yeah.
For me, a lot of that sits in exactly that space that we just had of like, wow, look at that thing. Right? And it's just, whether it's a hummingbird or a tree or a flower or the ocean or whatever, just a, wow, look at that thing, or a piece of art. Hummingbirds are one that really do it for me, which is why actually in the intro video, it's a hummingbird that's
I'll have to look at that again.
flying around back and forth. But yeah, so how you consider yourself spiritual but not religious, what form does your spirituality take? Because it's obviously you decided to get ordained, so it's clearly an important thing to you.
Yep. And I usually call myself a spiritual atheist.
Okay.
Because, and I use the term atheist not because I don't believe in which I call source, some sort of divine power, but I use the term atheist because for me it says, don't put your God on me. If I was to say I was a theist, my experience is then people plug their idea of God into me and what that is. And I have a very sort of private view of that I don't share that often because I'm not that interested in anybody's opinion of my thoughts on that.
Yeah.
I just have what I have. I'm incredibly fundamental about my beliefs. They are just fundamental to who I am. And they are unshakable, so I don't really need anybody's input in that. And I don't really feel like I need to share it with anybody. It's not that I'm not that magical that you need to hear about my God or my image of source.
Yeah.
It's such a private thing. And so I think that whole experience of coming to this, and how private it is, and how that whole formation process happened for me over the last 20 years or so, really taught me that we all find connection to whatever it is in our own little ways. And that to me is one of the most beautiful things about being human. And so not being religious means to me that I'm doing it on my own and it is what I believe it to be. It doesn't mean I'm not inspired by things I read and other faith traditions, but none of them have filled my whole bucket. They'll fill like a little inch,
Yeah. Yeah, I really, really like that as a way to put it. Connection is also, I'll sort of I'll respond to that part of it first. Because, connection is sort of a foundational thing for me. I didn't even realize, so something you and I had to do for ordination was write our core competencies assessment, which is 13 to 14 pages of answers to questions.
Yep.
The questions are 6.5 pages, and then the whole document is 20. So
Right.
there's the math. And when I had my panel to sort of discuss it afterwards, they were like, so you used the word connection a lot. Can you talk about that? And I was like, oh, yeah, it had not even occurred to me.
Yeah.
It's a word that I use a lot when I think about and talk about spirituality, but I don't know that I had noticed it, that it's a word that I use a lot. And so I've started to sort of refine it from this point that I was given of, well, this is clearly a thing that's important to you. And I've sort of started to play with that and think about it. And so I have this idea of like, and this is also a very spiritual but not religious SBNR thing to do. But I think of my Holy Trinity is like my connection to myself, right? And sort of my relation. We all have a relationship with ourselves.
Right.
And that relationship is probably the most complicated in our lives for most of us. Certainly high on the list.
Yes.
And then my relationship to other people, which includes family, includes community, includes strangers.
Right.
Includes people who I really have a hard time with, but it's sort of everyone. And then the third piece is just connection to everything. And that's, nature, astronomy. I almost said astrology, which is not what I meant. I meant astronomy, the stars, and what they look like, not necessarily what they are telling us.
Although I enjoy that here and there.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah.
It's not. To sort of use your idea of not filling my entire bucket, astrology does not fill very much of my bucket.
Yeah.
Although I think the way that I feel about it also is the way that I feel about pretty much any sort of spiritual approach, which is like, if it is dominating you and you are like subsuming all of your free will and all of your humanity in service of whether it's what the stars are telling you or what your pastor is telling you or whoever, or it doesn't even have to be explicitly religious. Like a thing I think about a lot is that capitalism is the religion of America.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's like, if Jamie Dimon, the CEO of,
and you're like, like if that's your defining statement, then I want to rumble a little bit.
I tend to I do more of the avoidance, right? In the sort of fight flight thing. I
actually do avoid more. I have to, because I'm not that interested in changing anybody's mind.
Yeah.
I don't actually believe I can. If I'm in a spiritual direction relationship with someone, then I am much more open to hearing the whole thing because you get to hear the whole container. But in a flipping conversation, I'm not that interested.
Yeah. This is also just making me think a bit about, so, you talked about coming to ministry to sort of embrace your own authority, or I think it's the term you used. And I, like, for me, my journey came from a place of, I do kind of want to change people's minds. Or at least, I don't know, changing people's minds is a more problematic way of putting it, but I sort of want to show people like, hey, we don't have to live this way. We don't have to be sort of dominated by our systems.
And I don't know if you've had this experience, but when I tell people that I just was ordained and that most of the people in our cohort probably describe themselves as non-religious, like there were very few who actually had a direct connection to a faith community.
Yeah, that's true.
And people's eyes like get wide open of, wait, there's a place for me in this. There could be a minister for me. And I believe that so deeply in my soul that we get to be that we get to represent that, and we get to help people see their worthiness and access to spiritual life.
Yeah.
Because if you are unchurched or you are unconnected to spiritual community, you often don't have language for your own spiritual life. And I've talked to so many people who say, I would love to pray, but I don't know how. Or there's this sort of mythology that you have to go, sit on a mountaintop under a tree for, 40 days, whatever your story is in order to be spiritual. And I'm here to tell people that's simply not true.
Yeah.
If you do the New York Times crossword puzzle religiously, like how is that intentionality? How is that time taking? What does that do for you? And isn't that, in fact, part of a spiritual practice? If this is what orients you to your day, whatever however you're living your life. For the way that you were talking about community, for me, it's around intentionality. If you are looking at what you're doing in your life with intentionality, you're looking at crises that come up and being intentional about your path through that. To me, you are living a deeply spiritual life.
Yeah, I like that a lot. It is time for us to take a very quick break.
Okay.
We will be right back.
Great.
Please like and subscribe. Please like and subscribe. Please like and subscribe. Please like and subscribe. Please like and subscribe.
Yes, friends, the sound of the Barbershop Quartet is to remind you to please hit the like button or the subscribe button, whatever platform you are engaging with this on. Please share it with your friends if you enjoy it. If you really want to help out, you can join my Patreon. But I'm just trying to get the word out. This is ministry. So we'll come back to this conversation, right? This is ministry, and this conversation is ministry. I just read an old friend of mine, like we were best friends at summer camp between the ages of 13 and 17. Nice. And we sort of stayed in occasional touch, but largely fell out of touch for a while. And then, I don't know, within the last few years have really reconnected. And so my friend Lance was on this show last year, and he has a new middle grade book out.
Oh.
And it's, it's fiction, and it's about an AI and like an AI friend app. It's called Zed Moonstein Makes a Friend. I won't spoil anything else about it. But I texted him after I read it. I was like, I really enjoyed this. Also, you probably wouldn't think of it this way, but I read this and like, I think this is really good ministry.
Yep.
Right? He's coming in with a message, and your point about intention is a really big one. I've been noodling with a thing that I've been writing, and it's basically like the most important thing that I've learned is that our brains will do whatever they are trained to do by our environment. But actually, that's the second most important thing, because the most important thing is if you don't approach that intentionally, it's happening unintentionally.
Yep.
And life is just happening at you.
At you, around you, to you, rather than you living it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think there is a lot of role, a lot of role. That's not good English. There is a role. There's a lot of room for for non-religious, just sort of pan-spiritual, or even pan-spiritual sort of implies a specific, it's like all of them, and it's like, well,
right, there's a different intentionality for me in that, in pan-spiritual than spiritual but not religious.
Also another, just as I just criticized myself for my grammar, a thing that I was thinking about recently is I sort of had this moment of like, I used to get upset when other people used poor grammar, and then I realized that what's actually upsetting me is that language evolves, and someday I'm going to die.
Oh, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Like it's not about the grammar. It's about things are changing, and that feels hard.
Yeah, it feels like things are changing way too fast now. And as I get older, I am so much more resistant to change. I have to do a lot of deep breathing around change,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I'll bet.
because I just want things to be how I romanticize them to be.
Mm-hmm.
But they're never what I think they were.
Yeah. Boy, there is a lot in that statement, because I thought you were going to say I want things to be how they are, which is what I am accustomed to.
Oh,
And you took it to I mean, I love it. You took it to another level of like, I want things to be what they are in my head, which is not actually what they are in reality.
I went to school in New Orleans and lived there for about 6 years, and it was just a magical, transformative time. Not because of school.
Yeah.
School didn't really the school I was at didn't really work for me, but New Orleans worked for me deeply as a place of connection. I think that's where my spiritual journey really started. Just sort of just walking on those bricks that have been there for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, and sort of the magic of the place and the voodoo and all of that. And connection is a deeply connected place, you know, and my friends were all older than me, and we would just sit around and talk and talk and talk and talk. You know, it was the late 80s late 80s. But later on, I only went back twice. And then I was going to take my whole family before Katrina, and then that didn't work. But my son was living there, and he lived there for about 2 years. And I just could not get on a plane and go see him. And it took me a while to realize I just need to have New Orleans stay in the little romantic place in my mind, and myself in that place. I don't want to see it post Katrina. I don't want to see it through my son's eyes. I want to keep it in my early 20s little mind as this perfect little place. I don't want to see the changes. I don't want to see that the cafe I adored isn't there anymore, or, you know, any of that. So I've never gone back.
Yeah. How do you feel about that as like I would imagine a thing that comes up a lot in spiritual direction work is people's difficulty with grieving loss, right? And like grieving things that are unavoidable in the way that going back to New Orleans is avoidable, like the opposite of that.
Right, sitting
you know,
with sort of the hardness.
Yeah. How does having this thing where, and I have those places too. I can't really think of anything. Well, no, my family used to go to South Carolina on vacation, and I haven't been there in probably 10 years, and I don't really feel the need to go back there. So I feel like I'm trying to figure out exactly what I'm asking, but I feel like there's something there of I think you and I would both say that generally speaking, it is a healthy behavior to like engage with the world as it is, and to develop your coping skills and all of that. But it's also, I don't know, I guess would you say like it's okay if there's something like this, it doesn't really harm anyone. Right. It's not like, to pick an example, it's not like you refuse to acknowledge that your child is no longer 5 years old. Right.
Right. And which you often see and you know, I worked a long time with parents in spiritual direction, and that was a really interesting tension point, because people want their kids to be something different than they are. And having to accept who is in front of you, you know, it's a hard thing to do sometimes. You're like, they're just not who I expected would be in my family.
Yeah.
And then helping sort of see what is the gift in that. What is the gift in the time you're in? What is the gift in the... Is that, and when I say gift, it's not about like, you know, if you're sitting with someone who's going through something hard, you know, you're not like, so what's the silver lining here? What's the gift? But what is the sort of the reframe? What is the learning in it? And also just sometimes life is just really hard. It is just hard. It is. I think being human is a ridiculous proposition in many ways. It's just hard, and we all try to like lump ourselves together, and, you know, you and I align in this area, and I align with someone else in this area, and, you know, it just is a really interesting process being human.
It is. I have a little little thing over here next to me from one of the classes that we had to take for ordination. I think it was spiritual psychology. And we had to come up with a mission statement. And mine starts with the phrase, life is wondrous, tragic, and ridiculous.
Yep. I'm with you 1,000%.
Yeah. There's a lot of all three of those things.
At all times. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
We are sentient meat bags. Technically sentient meat donuts, because we have there's a hole through the middle.
There you go. Yep.
Yeah. But
and then my other guiding statement that I have has led me through the last 20 years is everybody is doing the best that they can at all times.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that they're doing what we want them to do. It doesn't mean they're doing what we think is their best. But people are literally doing the best that they can. Like when your kid is not applying themselves at school, they are doing the best they can on that Thursday. That's it. Period. Done.
That is something that high school Seth needed to hear.
And parents.
Yeah.
And parents really need to embrace that.
Yeah.
They're not doing it against you. They're not applying themselves. Oh my gosh. Because being human is just hard. And when you're 16 and trying to be human.
Yeah.
Poof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being a teenager is a lot. I'm very glad I don't have to do that again.
No, I mean, we should just all be out on a field running around trying to figure stuff out, banging things against trees and trying to figure things out. But instead we put them in other buildings with 2,000 other people and this rigid schedule and ask them to be, skilled in all these different content areas. It's not normal. Nobody should be able to get an A in every subject and be, engaged in the world.
Yeah. Well, and there's something I never really thought about at the time, but there's also sort of a question of what is the sacrifice if you're doing that?
Right. There is something, right? There is definitely something is it relational? Is it building community? Is it, is it just being so anxious that you can't land in yourself and you're delaying that work that is essential human work?
Yeah. It makes me think of, I'm going to try not to share any identifying information here, but when I was in high school, I had a very good friend whose parents thought I was a bad influence because I really did not like doing homework, and so I often did not do my homework. And so for classes where everything was test-based, I tested very well. And so I got good grades in the things where I just had to do tests. I got bad grades in the things where homework was a big part of the grade. And this friend's parents were sort of concerned that if their child hung out with me a lot, that bad influence might rub off on their child.
Of course.
Well, look, social contagion is a real thing, right? Behavior. We do all influence each other a lot.
It absolutely is, yeah.
But also, this friend was drinking during the school day all the time and getting high during the school day all the time.
And yeah.
The friend was dealing with a lot of pressure at home from their parents, and so it still stands out in my head as this interesting example of difference of sort of what is going on the surface and what is going on under the surface can reveal very different things.
Right. And then landing in, for me, that they were doing the absolute best that they could do every day.
Yes.
They couldn't put a drink down or not smoke or,
Yeah.
to navigate their world at that time,
Yeah, because they were a teenager trying to cope with enormous amounts of pressure being put on them.
Yeah.
And, I was also coping with my own stuff that I was coping with, and it manifested in different ways, playing computer games until 2 a.m. on a school night, which was also unhealthy.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you familiar, do you know the stand-up comedian Pete Holmes?
Maybe.
Okay. He had a show on HBO called Crashing.
Oh, yes. Yep.
He has a podcast that I enjoy called You Made It Weird. And one of the things I have heard him say on it is, if I were you, I'd be you.
Yep.
And it's a great way of, and he's very interesting. He's like on my sort of dream guest list for at some point, because he's very spiritual. He grew up super religious and is now, he's much more sort of generally spiritual. But yeah, this idea of, we're all out here trying to police each other.
Right. And we have like a sprinkle of this and a sprinkle of that and skills in this and absolutely no skills in that. And we're all just sort of this potpourri of, what we are. And we can change some of that too as we age.
Yeah.
But it's just, I assume nothing anymore about anybody.
Yeah. I still get caught up in that trap.
Yeah.
But
right? Yeah.
Yeah, but now sometimes I catch myself and I go, yep, I'm caught up in the trap again.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. It is, I mean, it's hard enough to change ourselves. So the idea that we can change other people, I mean, we can change, like, we can affect specific behaviors of other people.
We can.
Right.
Yep.
And the example of my friend is a good one, because that friend's parents are largely responsible for that friend doing very well in school and going to a very good college. But there's sort of there's like I don't know, what's the classic thing of, like, you put down a rug and there's a lump and you push down over here and the lump just comes up on the other side of the room.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is kind of what ends up happening when we try to force people into being a certain way.
Yep, and the work of being human, you got to go through it. You can't go around it. You can't push it. It's going to pop up somewhere else. It's all going to show up.
Yeah. I mean, you can go around it. It's just not going to go well for you.
I guess so, yeah.
Right? Like, yeah, it's like you can, I don't know, there's some example of maybe, of like the Darien Gap in Central America. Like, you can go around the coast. This analogy is getting really tortured, but you can go around the coast, but it's going to take you through some really, really rough terrain.
Right.
And you might not make it through.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And so are you not going through something parallel?
Yeah. You're just going to go through a different thing in your avoiding the thing that you're trying to avoid. Yeah,
right.
That feels like a good way to put it. Would you feel comfortable talking about your newish job at this point?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So you are now the executive director of the Chaplaincy Institute,
I am,
which is the body that ordained both of us as interfaith ministers. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I don't want to put you on the spot about anything, but I'm curious what pulled you into taking on that kind of leadership role, and because you've been involved for a long time.
Yeah. I've been involved that's where I trained to be a spiritual director. And then I worked there on staff for quite a while. So over the 15 years, I've been in and out of working at CHI, the Chaplaincy Institute. What called me now is going through the process of ordination, going through that whole course of studies and ending up in ordination. Really, it's such a deep belief that process is that experience is needed so desperately right now, both for the personal transformation and for what our alums go out and do in changing the world. I mean, people are doing street ministry, prison ministry, hospital chaplaincy, congregational work, spiritual direction, one-on-one, creating entrepreneurial ministry, and often often non-religious, but always with a very open viewpoint of however you're showing up in the world is exactly how you're showing up in the world. Mm-hmm. And I felt really deeply called to keeping this going and making more of us and making this a path for more people to find. That I just feel in this time we're in, both the messiness of the world, but also because more and more people are identifying as non-religious. I mean, it's the largest growing segment in the country, I think, right now. So we are deeply needed. And the idea of us going out and doing ministry, we changed the world. And so I felt a deep call to the back end of that and keeping it going.
Yeah, I love that. I'll share, I guess, a little about my own, how I ended up here. Is that I was not religious. I mean, I grew up very culturally Jewish. And I did a sermon a week and a half ago that I can link to the TikTok in the description.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, I felt very sort of constrained by the containers, right? Yep. And the idea of like, and even sort of growing up Jewish, one of the things I talked about in this sermon is like, when I tried to engage with Jewish community, I just felt like I didn't belong, because it was like, well, you don't do this thing. You don't do this thing. You've never been on Birthright. How can you really be a Jew?
Right.
But I always, especially when I was in really amazing places in nature, just felt like, wow, just a really big wow.
Yeah.
And so I sort of eventually found my way to Buddhism and was like, oh, this is really cool, and really engages with it on I'm going to say a surface level, which I don't mean to imply that there's no depth, because there's plenty of depth. But in a lot of traditions, there's like a story, but if you want the deeper lesson of the story, like, you really need to dig and work for it.
Right.
And if all you're listening to is the story you hear, you might actually take away a different lesson.
Yep.
Than the one that's intended, or even, I mean, sometimes the one that's intended. At the service I went to on Saturday, the reading from the Torah was about when you go out to war, and it's basically like, when you're in battle, know that God is on your side, that kind of thing. And I'm like, well, whoever originally wrote this probably was involved with like the power structure and was writing this as a way to convince people to go and die for them and kill for them. Neither of which I would recommend.
Right. No.
Personally. But you can, a thing that I have liked and that I have started to see even within the containers that I have resisted is like, yeah, that's what that was originally about, but we don't have to take it that way. We can reimagine all of these things.
Right.
And we can reimagine what spiritual community looks like. We can reimagine what larger, systems of justice and economics, like we are only limited by the constraints of our imagination. A thing I like to say is the only laws are the laws of physics. Everything else is subject to change.
Exactly.
It's all, the rest of it's a human discussion.
Human construct, and
Yeah. But so I, as like what you were saying, I saw this need for like, oh, there are a lot of people who really aren't feeling the containers.
Yep.
But still want something.
Yeah. And we've seen how dangerous some of the containers are of sort of, this is scripture. This is how you are to read scripture. I'm just going to give you a little bit. You don't need to read the whole thing. Just this is enough, and the control over that. And the controlling messaging of it, I really, whenever I study faith traditions, I see the politics within of when things were turned up and when things were turned down, like, oh, we need to, quiet this. So then different things are lifted up historically through a faith tradition. And to me, that just feels so disconnected from spirituality. Just really, it feels man-made, usually actually man-made.
Yeah.
And it feels political, it feels controlling, it feels like a big marketing campaign to me most of the time, which feels so far removed from the spiritual life. And I'm not that interested in it. I'm really interested in, how are you connecting to the world? What's happening when you go to nature and it's a big wow? Like, to me, that's the magic of being human.
Yeah.
But where are your wows, How do you define prayer? And you get to define prayer. Just because, a clergy person says these are the words of prayer, that's, that might not be your words. You get to make that up.
Yeah.
If it's connecting you.
I really like, I think you said, "Where are your wows?"
Yeah.
Which I think is going to be the title of this episode when I post it. It's a really good one. Yeah, and this, I mean, it's interesting. So your point about, like, it's up to you what your prayer looks like.
Yeah.
I think that is, so I completely agree. And I also think that's a thing that's really hard for a lot of us when we are raised and acculturated in this society where we are constantly told, like, these are the lines, draw within these lines.
These are the lines, and these are the people who show you where the lines are. Mm-hmm. And unless you go and become ordained in that tradition, you don't get to say that. Mm-hmm. Which we're here to tell them that's not true.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and this is a thing for me that really goes beyond organized religion to any kind of organized system.
Yep.
And so, like, I have a lot of people in my life who are lawyers. Mm-hmm. My dad is an attorney. My brother went to law school, but then ended up not becoming an attorney, but still went to law school. And a number of, I'm trying to remember, of the 5 friends who were in my wedding party, only, I think 4 of them either were lawyers or are married to a lawyer. So it's a lot of lawyers anyway.
Right.
A lot of lawyers in my life. And the way, like, our legal system has gotten to this point, and I don't think anyone intended for it, and I certainly don't think my friends who went to law school were getting into it to do this, but it has gotten to this point where it's just like, it is no longer about justice. It is about what are the constraints of the game.
Yep.
And how can we, even if it's in kind of bad faith, how can we, like, technically stick to the law?
Right. And how do we contort to abide by these words?
Mm-hmm. And it also happens to be the case that if we have a lot of money, we can hire a team of lawyers to drown the other side in paperwork.
Right.
And so it's very, very tilted.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, this idea of, like, these are the lines we have to color inside the lines they're in every system. They're everywhere.
Every system. Yep.
Yeah. And for me, it was like, I was working in politics and I was like, I think actually all of this is downstream of culture, which I later found out apparently Steve Bannon also said politics is downstream of culture. And I'm like, well, I guess I found something I agree with Steve Bannon on.
There is the thing. The thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Congratulations. Now you can be done with that.
Yeah. And we have very different visions for what both culture and politics should look like.
And downstream.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I was like, well, spirituality is sort of a heart of culture, not even religion. I mean, for some people it is religion,
right.
but just, the way that we connect to each other and to everything.
Well, and I think we've seen over and over again that even religion often doesn't have anything to do with spirituality.
Yeah.
That we've seen that. I mean, we see it really enacted right now with this sort of Christian nationalist stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, where's the spirit? I would be hard-find to find the spirituality in their messaging there.
Yeah. I mean, something I was thinking about this earlier in this conversation, and I was like, I don't know, this might be a little touchy to say, because I grew up Jewish. I did not grow up Christian. But in the course of seminary, I read the Gospels, and I really, really liked what Jesus had to say.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And there is an idea in the way a lot of Christianity is practiced that is, God came to earth, or, incarnated as his son, sort of however you specifically want to put that. But there was a human being who was God who walked on earth. And then he died. And then he came back from the dead. And the things he said when he was alive, just ignore those. Like, God existed in human form. Don't worry about what he said.
Don't worry about it. We'll get to that later. Yeah. 100 years later. I mean, that's the part that cracks me up. It's 100 years later and people are saying, Jesus said, and you're like, okay, timeline here.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
The like game of telephone, just really big there.
It is such a game
You
of
know?
telephone. There's a thing that has made its way around the internet in the last few years of like, in 100 years, no one will know the difference between a butt dial and a booty call.
There you go. Yeah.
And so how are we supposed
Right.
to...
No, and that's like such a perfect, that so perfectly encapsulates why I have to hold all of that very lightly.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, to me...
We don't actually know who wrote these books.
Right.
That means something.
Right. Well,
We don't know what their grievance was or what what their motivation was. We don't know.
humans do tend to have both grievance and motivation.
They do. And that needs to be taken into account.
Yeah.
If you're going to call that your guiding principle.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree. I also think it's why, for me, like my guiding principle, you know, there's often a discussion of like, well, if you don't believe in divine punishment, then how are you supposed to be a moral person? And it's like, well, I look at the situation and I try not to harm people. It's like the Hippocratic Oath, right? I try to first do no harm.
Exactly.
And then I try to do, I at some point had 3 rules for living, and it was try not to be a jerk. Mm-hmm. When you're a jerk, own it and apologize.
I hate that one, but yeah.
I mean, but it's going to happen. So it's when that happens.
It's going to happen. And it gets much, much less painful the more I do it.
Yeah, that's also true.
Yeah.
Because you can practice anything.
Yep.
And then 3 is, well, it's a little bit of Yiddish, but it's do the menschy thing where possible. And a mensch is just, in Yiddish, is like just a good person, someone who's trying to help other people out. And so it's just, when you see an opportunity and you have the capacity to try to do good things, try to do those good things.
Yep. That's absolutely true. I'm with you on those 3.
We are just about at time. I do, though, since we're talking about guiding principles and moral compasses, I would love to ask what you consider to be your guiding principle and compass.
Well, that's
if you're willing to share. That's a what?
That's a light breezy question.
It is.
I mean, I think it's those 2 things that I talked about, intentionality and everybody is really doing the best that they can.
Yeah.
If I hold those 2, like if I am really being thoughtful about what choices I make in my life down to the micro and up to the macro, then I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
And if I can, when I'm pissed off about, if someone's trying to cut me off in traffic and I'm like, okay, they're really doing the best that they can, even though they're pretending like, nothing happened or whatever. It is a reframe that really helps me a lot.
Yeah.
It really helps me to sort of be like, just breathe. You're not, nobody's against you. We're all just navigating this together.
Yeah.
And hard to hold sometimes with what we're seeing,
Yeah.
I don't know how I hold it for those people. That's been a real challenging piece of this time, is how to use my spiritual beliefs about people and how I really, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. It is hard to hold that as a standard in these days.
Yeah, that's 100% true.
Because I'm like, oh, him too, and him too? Are you really?
That fucking guy.
I don't know if I can expand that much.
Yeah, I know. It's hard. In my sermon a couple of weeks ago, I was talking about metta meditation, loving kindness meditation in Buddhism. And I was like, and you sort of start with practicing, you ask for loving kindness for yourself, and then for someone you care about, and then for someone you don't know, and then for someone who it's really hard to think nicely about.
Yep.
And like, that's part of the practice. It doesn't mean you're going to naturally feel that way, but
nope. And you're not going to, and
worth it.
And we're doing the best we can, right? So
yeah, that's true.
Considering it.
Everyone is doing the best they can, includes us.
Includes us, yep. And some days I'm not that proud, but, still here, doing the thing. Yeah.
All right. Well, we are going to move on to our new closing segment, which also has a little video intro.
It's conceptual show and tell, or an actual thing.
All right. So this segment is called Conceptual Show and Tell, or an actual thing.
Or an actual thing.
In which I ask my guests to bring something for show and tell, and that thing can be a concept or a picture or whatever, or it can be an actual thing.
Yeah.
So, did you bring something today?
I did. Well, I'm just going to introduce it as when I went to school, I tried to drop out when I was 18. I was at Newcomb College, part of Tulane University, and I wanted to drop out. And I went to the office, and the woman said to me, "Young lady, Newcomb girls don't drop out. You just go buy yourself an alarm clock and you get it together." And it was just like, I didn't work for me. And I said, fine, I will just take all art classes. That's what I'll do.
Okay.
Which was, of course, the opening to my whole life.
Yeah.
And I had been an incredibly creative kid, but in my family, I couldn't draw. And so the story in my family was that I was the least creative of the four kids. But if you had looked at my trajectory and what we understand about creativity now, I was making toys in the basement and, had my own woodworking thing and inventing games and, hugely creative.
Incredibly creative things. Yeah.
Doing technical theater every minute possible, which is a hugely creative endeavor. But because I can't draw realistically, which is a thing that our culture does, right? That artists can draw. So I decided at Tulane that I would only take art classes, which opened this whole thing up to me. And I have found a huge parallel between being an artist and being a spiritual person. And the way our culture talks about both, like our culture says, if you can't draw or make representational work, then you are not an artist. It also says, if you don't know how to pray or you don't have a faith tradition, you're also not spiritual. So there's a huge parallel between these two. And the connection I would have when I create art, the lost I get, the just surrender to whatever's coming through me. And when my mind is kind of going a mile a minute and standing still simultaneously, but it is otherworldly, which is a similar parallel experience to when I've had sort of peak experiences or really in a solid, deep meditation of my mind being completely connected. So there's a direct parallel here for me. And I find being spiritual but not religious to be an incredibly creative act, because you constantly have to sort of figure out what is your inspiration, what moves you, why is that, how does that puzzle fit together? And so it works really well for me. So I was just going to share a little bit of my website, if that's okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And, just I don't know why, just because.
Yeah, great.
You said share something.
Yeah.
So these are my new works that came out of during ordination time called, can you see that?
Yeah, I can.
On the corner of Divinity and Main, which kind of sums up how I feel my ministry is, sort of between the divine and regular Main Street,
Yeah.
So those are all that, sort of the relationship and the space in between. And these are actually called all the stuff in between. Looking at, that space between relationships and the space between knowing someone.
Oh, those are so cool.
I also love to do series. So this one is This is America, Seditionist Heroes and Other Americans. So all the sort of background people there. We have Joe Manchin.
Okay.
And I can tell you who all these people are.
Take a portrait of Joe Manchin.
Obviously. Yeah, exactly. And then, this is the woman who wouldn't sign the papers for Biden to do all the work he needed to do when he got elected. And it was just, and then we have my dad and me.
Okay.
And, it was a very therapeutic way to deal with Trump 1.
Yeah.
And then I have a whole portrait. We used to be called the car hospice, where cars would come to die gently.
Okay.
And when I did this is a portrait of all the cars I've owned, because I've had like 28 cars. Now I've probably had 35 cars. So that was very fun.
Yeah, these are so cool.
It's a way of processing my own narrative and my own story and where I've been and where I'm going and all of that.
That's so cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, sure.
And I'll put a link to your website also in the description. This is my little description dance.
Pointing down, yeah.
Great. Well, we can end it on that lovely note.
Excellent.
And now, Now we have a little goodbye song. Well, thank you, friend, Reverend Susie, for your visit today. Now it's time we both go on our way. The world will still be insane tomorrow, but don't let that fill your heart with sorrow. You can thrive in a desert, just ask a saguaro. Please give to my Patreon. Capitalism is fun. Let's build a world that is good. This is a show for adults.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much, friend.
Thank you so much. Such a joy to be here with you. Love you much.
Love you too.